live from New York City. It's Saturday night. Just kidding. I am recording this actually in my car as I'm heading out to Ian's family's annual camping reunion week. They like to camp at Mohican State Park in Ohio, in the boon schwaddle-a-doo of Ohio. So I'm heading out to camp with them for a few days and needed to record a new podcast. So thanks for joining me. Hopefully this audio is not awful. I have a good mic, but I'm wondering if the rumble of the car will affect anything. So if you can hear it rumble, just don't. Just let it do its thing. But hey, I hope your day's going well. I hope it gets better after this podcast. We could use some encouragement in the world right now. I'm sure wherever you are today listening to this, I'm sure some headline has got your attention. I'm sure whether it is Donald Trump getting shot at recently, which is terrifying, or the notion that it could be an entirely made up conspiracy, which is also frightening. Just the state of the American democracy and political year. Maybe it's that. Maybe that's on your mind today. Maybe it's something with your faith community, with your family. Maybe it's just something you're going through personally, spiritually, at work, whatever it may be. I hope that this little chitty chat about fun things in New York City and the summertime and trying to stay present in this ever-changing world finds you in a good spot and that you will have some optimism post-chat. So anyway, let's dive in and we're going to talk all things New York today. All right, so New York City just so happens to be one of my all-time favorite places to be. I think I've been there 6 times. I think this is my 6th trip to New York City, which is an honor to say. I know that in the age of social media, it's really tempting to just go all these places or see all these people doing all these things. But honestly, I never want to take for granted, what it takes to save up and what a blessing it is to be able to travel as much as Ian and I do. And while we do travel on a budget often or for work and don't actually get to relax much, it is such a treat to be able to travel. And I will never take that for granted. But I recently got to go on an amazing little trip to New York City. And I wanted to share today kind of what we did and maybe throw in some recommendations to anyone who's going for the first time in a long time. I kind of sound like a pastor when I'm saying that. If this is your first time or first time in a long time at church, we're not going to ask you to tithe. But I think it'd be fun to chat about. So if you are, someone who wants to check out NYC at any point or, frequent the city and wants new suggestions, maybe this is helpful for you. But I'm just going to jump in and kind of talk about why I went on the trip, what I did, and what you could do next time you're in town. So, Ian lived in Los Angeles before we met, and he met some amazing creatives while he was there. So a lot of the people out there, the young single folks, all go out there to do their creative career in whatever they're doing. Instagram influencing, acting, modeling, dancing, whatever, you name it. So most of his friends from his time out in LA are in that world, which is great. That's the world we're in too, but we don't live in the same spots because they're there for a few years and for one reason or another they end up moving away. Not all of them, some of them though. And obviously COVID happening, we didn't get to see everyone as much. And then we got married and a lot of folks couldn't attend because of COVID and COVID regulations. So here we are. So one of the friends he met when he was in Los Angeles, her name's Shayla. Shout out to Shayla J. She's amazing. She's such a joy and just a light, bubbly personality. And she's a dancer, a hairdresser, and an Instagram influencer. I think she was known for her TikTok for a long time. But they were super great friends, and she really wanted to come out for our wedding during COVID, but she lives in Australia. So after they had made friendships and everything with a bunch of cool people in LA, COVID happened and she went home to Australia. We got married, and I remember FaceTiming her, and she was like, I can't attend. That's not how you do an Australian accent. I can't attend. That's not it either. Anyway, she was really bummed she couldn't attend, and we were too, because I was like, I've never met this girl. Like, I want to hang out. I want to have friends that are cool and creative. So she reached out recently and was like, hey, I'm coming back to the States for the first time in 4 years. I'm going to be in Los Angeles for a few weeks and then New York. And I was like, I wish I could meet you in LA, but I'm not going to be there till September. And she was coming mid-July or mid-June. And so I was like, I could make it to New York, though, because one of my dear friends lives there. I love the city, and it's a much faster, much cheaper flight to get from Columbus, Ohio to New York than it is Columbus, Ohio to LAX. So we hatched a little plan, and that kind of initiated the trip overall. So I was excited to go see her, hang out, maybe do some content photos. And obviously when I travel places, I love to have a couple do some photos with me as well. So I got something on the books, and that kind of like sparked all the goodness of planning a little mini last minute trip. I think I planned the whole thing within 2 weeks of like getting the message and booking a flight. So I'm like, all right, cool. We're going to be in New York. So then we get a little bit closer, and I chat with my friend who lives there. Shout out to Glace. And I'm like, all right, like, can I stay with you? What's the vibe? And she had a couple things on her schedule already, but always is so hospitable, arms wide open, apartment door wide open with her and her friend Deidre. So I got to go and crash with them. So here's what I did. I flew in super early on, I think it was like a Monday morning, because I had just gone up to Cleveland the day before for an art thing with my aunt and my sister. So guys, summer is crazy town. Okay. You guys don't need to know all this, but I'll just tell you all of this. Like, why not? And there's only like, 20 of you who listen. So it's great. Me and my 20 listeners, here we go. My sister lives in Cincinnati for college, and my aunt lives in Cleveland. And my sister doesn't have a vehicle, but really wants to see my aunt. So I go down to Cincinnati. So I go Columbus to Cincinnati, pick her up, then come back to Columbus, spend the night, then go up to Cleveland the next day, spend the night up there so that my sister and my aunt can have some friend time. We go to the Cleveland Art Museum, which is amazing. Enjoyed an afternoon there. Then we came back to Columbus before my hero of a husband took my sister back down from Columbus to Cincinnati, then back home. Then the next day, I got on a plane to go to New York. So that's my life. So that all happened, and then I get up, I think at like 3:45. I catch a really early flight to New York City. I think it left at 5 a.m. Flew in, landed, got an Uber, and started heading to my friend's apartment. And it took about an hour from the airport to her place because that's just traffic in New York City. And I got there by like 8:30, 8:40. And we grabbed a little bite to eat, a bagel and coffee and cream cheese, so New Yorky. And then I commuted with her to go to her job and dropped her off at her work in the Upper East Side. And then my day was just beginning, and I had been up for 5 or 6 hours at that point. But it was still it was only 10 a.m. at that point, which I am just constantly baffled at how that works. That we live in such a time where you can just hop on a plane and go from Columbus, Ohio to New York City, the busiest, craziest, most amazing, inspiring place in the world, be there in less than an hour and a half. And then, I was walking around the Upper East Side at 10 a.m. having, you know what I mean? Having just that's the time I just be getting started on my day here in Ohio. I was joking with Grace. I was like, I could, commute to work every day and go to work in New York City and fly home every night. You honestly kind of could. And that would be a shorter commute than most people who take just the subways. I don't know. It's just interesting. But I'm very grateful that we're not in any other era, even though it's chaotic and a mess. I think I've said this before. If I could be born in another era, I would have just been born maybe a decade earlier. So I could have grown up more in the 90s rather than the early 2000s, because I think a little less technology a part of my upbringing would have been just much better overall. But I think it's amazing that we live in a time where there's cell phones and smartphones and planes and trains and automobiles and cappuccinos and like, I don't know. I don't think I would have fared very well if I was in the war times or 1930s, 1920s or anything like that. Or God forbid, like BC era. I think God knew what he was doing by putting me in this time and space. And I think he knows what he's doing by doing that for you too. So anyway, all right. So now I'm in New York City. This is day one. And my friend had work. So I was just running around the Upper East Side pretty much. I put some of these highlights on my Instagram, India and stuff so that you can kind of see everything I did and like what each day looked like. But yeah, that first day, after I dropped Grace off at work, which is funny to say, she dropped me off in New York. That's more how to say it. She's much more of a native than I am. But after that, I walked down to a coffee shop. I got a latte to kind of stay awake. I just kind of got my bearings for a second, mapped out a few things I wanted to do that day, did my makeup in the bathroom because I still had not gotten my makeup on. And then I just kind of went for a walk around town. I went to a thrift store called the Niche Shop, which is pretty cool. It's like vintage and thrift, so it was a little higher end on pricing, so I didn't get anything, but I really liked their curation of products. And then I did some window shopping down Madison Avenue. I found a really cool new store that I would love to save up for and buy from one day. It's called, what's it called? Unsubscribed. And I thought that was really unique. It's about unsubscribing from fast fashion, which I am all about. And I chatted with their sales manager for a while. All their salespeople were very friendly, and they have very gorgeous, kind of upscale, feminine, think like Kate Middleton meets Summer in the Hamptons style. Just very nice quality fabrics, really beautiful materials. And I love that. I think they were saying like 80 to 90% of what they sell is from very intentional, slow fashion or fair trade brands. So I thought that was pretty good and pretty impressive, and I liked what they had there. And then I went to get some crayons because I was feeling creative and wanted to heal my inner child a little bit. I grabbed some lunch nearby at a place called Taman, I believe. Very delicious vegan vegetarian place. Even though I am a meat eater, it's really fun just to try new things and to eat a little healthier. And so they had a really delicious roasted cauliflower platter. So I was very excited to try that. It was like full of chickpeas and hummus and just delicious Mediterranean veggies and spices. So I had some of that deliciousness. Then I walked down to Central Park. I made my little spot near the Jackie Kennedy Reservoir, which I had not been to before. I try to go to a different spot in Central Park every time I visit because it's huge. It is the most massive park, and it's so full of little treasures. And I think when I went the very first time in New York City, I was 16, and it was winter, and my friend and I walked from like Midtown Manhattan, Times Square, up to Central Park. And that's all I saw. So it was like dead and wintry, and there was like horse carriages, and it was cool, but it was not like what it is in the summertime or what it is if you find a quieter spot more uptown or something. So anyway, I was excited to try that newer new to me loop around the Jackie Kennedy Reservoir. So that was beautiful. It just feels like you're not in the city at all. Huge, giant body of water, very peaceful. So I actually fell asleep. I napped a little bit in the park. I drew with my crayons. I got inspired, listened to some music, and just kind of journaled for a little bit, which I love doing all of those things when I travel solo. What else? Okay, that first day. Then I think I met up with my friend again. The other thing about New York, though, I love and hate is that they do have a great amount of, I shouldn't say great, they do have some public restrooms free to use, which I think every city in America should have free public restrooms. There should never be a time where you have to pay money at a place or feel like you're obligated to pay money to pee. You know what I mean? Like, when we're on road trips, we'll usually stop at a gas station and probably just get a drink or a snack or something just to like be kind. But I honestly don't feel like it's necessary. You know, like I feel like that is just fine. It's a human need to go pee. You would get arrested if you pee on the side of the road and get caught, which I've not gotten caught, but I have peed on the side of the road many times on long road trips because you just have to pee. You know what I mean? Like, this should be free. There should be more clean public restrooms for everybody. So there are a number of them in New York, which is a good thing, but not enough, and especially not on the Upper East Side. So when I was walking back from Central Park, I really had to use the bathroom. All the Starbuckses tend to be cool about it. Whole Foods tended to be cool about it. But most cafes, you have to buy something and have a code. Most shops don't even have a bathroom at all, even if you beg to use the employee one, which we all know they have. But there was one outside of the Met near Central Park, and I peed there, which was great. It was pretty clean, honestly, all things considered. But yeah, you guys, you don't need to hear me talk about my pee. You want to hear more about New York City. So then I met up with my friend Grace, and then we took the train down to Bryant Park. And one of the things I love so much about New York City is that there's always something happening. There's always something going on. And this summer, I guess Paramount Plus was doing a series of free movies in the park. And so her friends were saving us a spot. They put some picnic blankets down, and we went to Bryant Park and watched Gladiator for free, which is amazing. And like, you could say, oh, okay, like whatever, a movie in the park. Guys, there was like 2,000 or 3,000 people there. Like, thousands of New Yorkers came out at 5 o'clock to secure their picnic spot, and the movie didn't even start till 8. And then everyone was there till probably 11 p.m. watching this film. And I was just like, this is so cool. Like, business people who, if you passed on the side of the road, you wouldn't know their socioeconomic status at all. Every creed and kind and ethnicity, age group, kids, parents, businesswomen. I love it. I just love it. It's the big, great melting pot. I get super patriotic when I talk about New York City. I'm like, this is the American dream. And it really is. And it was just really fun. We got some snack food from Whole Foods and just munched and watched a movie and had a great time under this beautiful Manhattan skyline. So that was day one. I think I was up for like 21, 22 hours because of the early morning flight. Whoa, I just passed some guy who looks like Moses in the Steve Carell version of Moses. Anyway, it was great. It was a beautiful first day. So then the second day, I did have a photo shoot kind of on the books, and there was a little miscommunication, and it didn't happen. So it was all good, but that just kind of meant that the day was up for grabs. So my friend Grace that I was staying with already had plans for that day and had already kind of told me that. So I was like, all right, the day is mine. It is up for grabs for India. So I had the best time. Solo day in New York. I think I'm going to make a post about this, like solo ideas, because there's truly so much you can do. But what I chose to do is, first of all, sleep in, which was necessity. It was so needed. I slept in for a while, stayed at her apartment, and then I did some breakfast there, sat on her little balcony in Brooklyn, a little Brooklyn stoop. And then I made my way from her place, took the train to Dumbo, which, if you have seen New York stuff or are kind of more of the touristy type, no shame. I love a good tourist moment too. But Dumbo is down under Down under the Manhattan-Brooklyn Bridge? I don't know. Down under the Manhattan Bridge overlook. Something like that. But it's basically this really cool spot that was designed in the city so you can see, I think it's the Brooklyn Bridge that you're looking at, and it aligns perfectly with the Empire State Building, and you kind of just have this gorgeous tunnel view of the buildings on one side, the bridge right down the middle, and then the Empire State Building all the way through. It's super stunning. I'm pretty sure it was an intentionally designed thing, and if it wasn't, dang, like, what a shocking revelation. But it's just beautiful. So I went there, very tourist heavy, and I expected that. It was kind of, high noon-ish time. Maybe it was like 11 a.m., so the sun was pretty high. Lots of people taking selfies and pictures. But I did the same. I just not selflessly, I had no cares in the world, set up my little content tripod thing, put my phone on it, took some photos, and honestly, no one cared. And I was cool with it because it was such a touristy area. I'm like, everyone's expecting to see people taking photos. Like, it didn't bother anyone. It didn't bother me. I didn't feel like I was the odd one out or looking annoying or anything. So I just shamelessly did it, and I had some fun there. I ended up offering, because I just feel like as a photographer, and like if I'm going to take photos, I'm going to offer to take other people's as well. We all want that content kind of thing. I don't know how I feel about that, but whatever. So I offered to take some photos for other people, said hey to a couple folks, and then I walked down to a market called Time Out Market. In retrospect, I think it was pretty touristy. They know what they're doing, putting their space right there. But honestly, sometimes when you're traveling, that's all you need is a big space with a bathroom, some AC, and some good options for food. And so I enjoyed it overall. And it'd be great if you're traveling with family or friends, like a larger group, to go to this market because there's lots of seating. It's a multi-level area, really beautiful view of the waterfront and the bridges. So you kind of can't go wrong. Great Manhattan skyline view. So I went there and I got a little snack. I got some fried pickles and some boba tea, which was all yummy and delicious. And then I listened to my audiobook and walked across the Brooklyn Bridge. So this was my second time walking across the Brooklyn Bridge. The last time I was with my friend and we did it at nighttime, and it was beautiful. The sights are so pretty. It's just such a fun New York experience, I think. It is very touristy, whatever. It's not like you're going to commute there if you live there. But it's just a fun thing to do. And so I decided to get my steps in, and I walked from Brooklyn to Manhattan. And I listened to my audiobook, which I was listening to, which is so good, by the way. It's called The Silent Patient, if you haven't read it or listened to it yet. Oh, it was very good. I really much enjoyed it. But I also unlocked a new fear, which was walking with my AirPods over the Brooklyn Bridge. Because if those things fall out of your ear, which mine tend to do, they are not just gone, oh no, they fell off the bridge. It's they could fall into rush hour traffic underneath your feet or the Hudson River. So you're not going to get those back at all. So I was a little nervous about that, but it was all good. And it's just such a fun thing to walk around the city, listen to an audiobook, get lost in your own world, take photos, enjoy the sights, enjoy everything. It was great. So once I made my way across, I stopped a little bit outside of City Hall and just people watched for a moment. And then I realized I was only a 12-minute walk away from Chinatown. And I don't think I'd ever been there before. So I walked down to Chinatown and I grabbed a little coffee at a cafe, kind of eavesdropped into a tour group to hear a little bit more about the Chinatown area, which is so unique. And I would love to go and do a meal there next time. That is one regret I have of this trip is I didn't plan my eating very well. And so I saved money by not eating that much. And I just did little snacks or little coffees when I stopped. But you're in New York City. This is the best food in the world. So I wish I would have thought that out a little bit better and planned out more of my food opportunities to get some good bites in. But there's always next time. So then I went from Chinatown and I took the train up to Midtown to go to Moma. And I went to the art museum. And so I've done the Met and I've done, I want to say one of the Smithsonian's. Now that I think about it, that might not be true. But I hadn't done Moma before. So I was very blessed to go and enjoy that museum. You guys, also just what is life? Because Moma has some of the most iconic art pieces you've ever heard of. The artists lineup is insane. It's all modern, contemporary, not so much contemporary, but I think there was a few contemporary galleries and artists featured. But I'm talking Starry Night by Van Gogh. We're talking Picasso, Georgia O'Keeffe, Monet, Manet, like lots of amazing iconic pieces that we talked about in our history books and in our art history classes were staring at my face. And I was just like, what? Like, I was there for probably 2.5 hours and I was just mesmerized. I was like, this is wild to me. Like, all of these fantastic pieces. And thinking just days prior, I was at the Cleveland Art Museum staring at Monet's water lilies and other iconic pieces and other Da Vinci's and other, what's-his-faces. You know, like, I don't know. I had just witnessed so many other beautiful pieces and now I was staring at even more. It's just kind of amazing to be alive, again, at this time where we can have this privilege and this opportunity to go and witness art and history right in front of us. Like, yeah, you have to like take a plane and buy a ticket, but then you're there and you're face to face with Starry Night and you're face to face with Picasso's greatest works. Like, oh, it's just so crazy. It's just crazy. But what I thought was hilarious about MoMA was they have all these amazing, outstanding artists. And then they also had the guy who did the paper bag. His bag was on display. And I thought that was iconic, top tier behavior. So then I went and hung out in the MoMA design store. Now, if I had $1 billion, I would have gotten so many trinkets there. They have such cool things. There's like a gift shop in the MoMA museum basement area, which was just beautifully designed. There's books on all the artists, coffee table books, drinkware, purses, all kinds of beautiful stuff. Then right across the street, there's a whole nother design store that's like the gift shop times 3. And so there's like even better and bigger and more intentional pieces. So like silk scarves and cool handbags and like more homey items, stuff for camping, backpacks. I think I already said glassware, stuff for your kitchen, coffee makers, all that kind of stuff. So it was just a really cool experience, and I'd love to go back and buy a number of things, but that'll have to be another day. So I am a little sad I didn't get any souvenirs this trip. There is another story based on that, but like right before the whole trip, we had a really strange family situation happen, and basically just meant we were on a shoestring budget. So it's kind of bad timing having just planned this last second trip thinking we'd be fine financially, but then it was like crazy. So more on that later. But yeah, so then I ran over to Rockefeller Center and got a little ice cream because I was pretty hungry, but wanted to wait for my friend to get off work so we could meet up for dinner. She ended up having a little bit of a delay, which is totally fine. And then the subways were kind of acting up. So I just got to experience, you know, a true New York experience of things going wrong and you just got to pivot. So it was all good. But we ended up meeting up just for a brief second because at the last minute, I decided to buy myself a ticket to see The Great Gatsby on Broadway. And again, not the best decision with all the shoestring budgeting at the last moment, but I have no regrets about this. It was so good. Okay, I have to back up though. My love, my passion as a teenager and high schooler, and kind of still to this day, was musical theater. I was a huge thespian. I was in every single musical production we did during middle school and high school. I did a couple plays. I did community theater. Obviously, I've talked about my acting journey a little bit now. I love it. I love it. I loved Broadway and geeking out about all the Broadway boys. And so my friends and I would like fantasize, crush on, listen to the best Broadway talent as teenagers. Like some girls were out there crushing on like, you know, soccer players and Messi and Ronaldo and David Beckham. Sure, whatever. I was into Jeremy Jordan and Aaron Tveit and Derek Klena and these Broadway men. They were amazing and still are. And so, like, when I was 16, you could find me with my hot pink MP3 player illegally downloading Broadway tunes from Bonnie and Clyde and listening on my parents' porch or on the roof. If I was feeling really angsty, I'd climb out of my window and sit on the roof and listen to these men with their vocal runs and their tippity-tappity performances at 54 Below. Like, that was my, as Taylor Swift would say, that was the asylum they raised me in. Like, I loved every second of it. And when I was in New York this time, I was looking at this, I think it's called Today Tix. It's this app that you can buy last minute seats to Broadway shows. And so I was looking at the app and I was like, you know what? I'm going to treat myself. I work really freaking hard. I did not get to get my Taylor Swift Eras Tour tickets. I'm going to treat myself to a Broadway show starring Jeremy Jordan, which is my high school Broadway boy crush. And I spent, you're not even going to believe this, $80. $80 on a ticket that was in the orchestra area. I was 5 rows back from the stage, right behind the orchestra pit. Oh my word. You guys, like, you cannot, I know some people are like, oh my gosh, you spent $80 on a Broadway show. Listen, I have spent more on Columbus, Ohio shows that's not even really Broadway, it's a traveling cast. And you spend more on Disney World for a day. Disney World tickets are like $159 for an adult to get in the park. That's not food, that's not parking. So $80 to see my dream performer on Broadway, which, by the way, you guys aren't even like, no one's coming at me for this. I'm just being defensive for no reason. By the way, he has not been on Broadway in like a decade. Like, he hasn't been on a show in a long time. So Jeremy Jordan was like the original Broadway boy in Newsies. He was in Bonnie and Clyde. He did the TV show Smash on NBC, if you guys remember that little puppy, which I stayed up late to watch all the time. He did a lot of stuff in 54 Below. He did the movie with Anna Kendrick the last 5 years. Basically, he's just an icon, and he hasn't done a live show in forever. And so he was playing Jay Gatsby in The Great Gatsby across Eva, I cannot pronounce the last name, Nova something. She was phenomenal too, because she's from Hadestown and just has the voice of a freaking angel. Everything was effortless with her. Oh my word, I'm getting out of breath just thinking about it. It was stunning. I do think, if I was going to have one critical thing to say about the show, the music overall, for being the 1920s Gatsby iconic, nature that is, could have been a little bit more, could have been a little more jazzy, could have been a little more of the times, I guess. But overall, it was such a beautiful show. I think they had just won a Tony weeks before for, I believe, costume design, which was well worth it. Their set design was also impeccable. The way that they made things look like this multi-million-dollar Gatsby mansion, and then instantly, seamlessly transport you to the, out-of-town gas station where the lower-class folks were living. It was just beautifully done. The choreo was amazing. I never saw one dancer slip or trip or mess up a line. Jeremy Jordan was singing his heart out. He was spitting everywhere. I was like, oh my word, like, let's go. The breath control was amazing. The actors were dedicated. Eva's performance was phenomenal. She was like in tears left and right, able to control herself, but also seamlessly be so present in the role. It was just wonderful. So anyway, had to step off my little Broadway box. I got a little lost there. I love it. So I just took myself on a date, and it was awesome. And I'm just so blessed. Like, yeah, that was just a really, really beautiful treat to do that and to witness art. And I love live art. I love performing arts, and I always want to be a patron of the arts, even when I don't have that much money myself and often feel like a starving artist myself. I want to still support artists any way I can. So I'm very honored to be able to do that. Afterwards, it was the week of 4th of July, so it was starting to get really crowded with tourists in Times Square, and obviously the theater district is right there, so you are like in the thick of it, right? And so I walked solo from the theater down to grab a bite to eat at Los Tacos #1, which is one of my favorite taco places in the city. And the line was out the door. But I waited because I was really hungry and it was really cheap and not everything. Like at that point, it was almost midnight because I stage doored to try to say hey to some of the actors, which I got to say hey to some of them, but not Eva and not Jeremy. He went too fast and he didn't say hi or sign my playbill. So I was a little bummed about that, but I stayed and talked to some of the other ones and told them congratulations and chatted with some other Broadway thespians. So then, yeah, I went to go grab a taco. Then it was time to meet up with my friend Grace. So she had already made plans and was down in Brooklyn near Prospect Park. So if you know New York, that's like 45 minutes of trains away from Midtown Manhattan, Times Square, where I was. So I was like, okay, let's meet up where you are. I'll just come to you because she lives in Brooklyn. So that way we just have to meet up, grab a drink, and then take one more train home. I get to the right spot. I'm learning better. I'm learning a little bit better about the subways and getting smarter with them. But it is so confusing. Like even being my 6th time in the city, every time I take the subways, you know, I'm using Google Maps. I'm watching out for all this stuff. But it's still confusing. And so I got to the right subway spot and I get down there and I'm waiting for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then someone comes along and says there's no train. There's no, I think it was the G train and the M train were out, and another train that we needed to take that took you from Manhattan to Brooklyn was just out of order the whole week. So I was like, oh shoot, like the 3 trains that I take are all gone. And so I call my friend. It's a little past midnight, I believe, at this point. Thankfully, I've had my tacos, so I wasn't as starving anymore. But I'm like, hey girl, how do I get to you now? And she was like, honestly, and she's lived in New York for like 3 years now. She was like, honestly, I don't know. I was like, should I take a bus? And then I'm looking on the Google Maps and the bus is gonna take hours, like 1 hour and 45 minutes, you know? I'm like, that's just not gonna make sense. And she was like, let me come towards you. We'll go to a bar in like Williamsburg or something. So that it's not the whole way, but like I'll come to you, you come down to me, take this train instead. I took like the 123 red line, which I had never taken that one before, I think. So I start to take that and I ended up, I get on the train and I'm like, all right, great. Well, I'll see you in like 20 minutes. And I take it 2 stops before I realize I'm going in the wrong direction. I'm going back uptown, back towards the Upper East Side. And I'm like, oh, no. I need to go down. So, again, New York things, I'm learning. But then I get off, switcheroo, get on the direction, the same train, just the right direction. So then I finally make it to the bar she told me to meet her at, and then her train gets delayed. So at this point, I'm chatting with some random dudes who were desperately trying to flirt with me. The way they were flirting, they weren't very good at it because he was like, oh, I like your ring. And I was like, thanks, my husband gave it to me. And he was like, oh, that's cool. And I was like, what? Like he was trying to make conversation about me being married. And I was like, I'm not interested in, I mean, I can chat to anyone, but like, is that your version of flirting or just making small talk? But yeah, so anyway, then my friend finally got there. Grace arrived. We ordered some cocktails that were very cheap, and you could taste that they were very cheap. And we just had a good laugh about the whole situation. But it basically, guys, it took us 2 hours. The show ended a little before 10, and it took me 2 hours to be done with the show, grab a taco, and meet my friend for drinks somewhere that was less than 2 miles away. Like, isn't that wild? Like, that is just part of New York City, is like, I guess that I sound like a super dummy. Like, that's just part of the magic. But like, it actually is. That is part of New York and figuring out life and being not a tourist there, but hopefully a visitor and a traveler, and learning what it's like to be a local. So then we got our drinkies. We were both really tired at that point. It was probably 1:30, 1:45 a.m. And a lot of folks, again, had the holiday off for 4th of July coming up. So people were still out and about. The bar was still crawling around, but we were like, let's get home. So we took the trains, got back to her place, and passed out. And it was exhausting, but thankfully we got a good night's sleep. And then it was the 3rd of July. And so this was the day that my friend Shayla was coming back into town, throwing it all the way back to the start of the episode. And so I wasn't quite sure what time or what the plan was, but we loosely made dinner plans and hoped to do some content photos. But other than that, you know, we were just like, let's work remotely on some projects and explore Brooklyn a bit, and then we'll go to dinner. So we started by hanging out with my friend and her roommate at their place, made some coffee, made some breakfast. We just kind of enjoyed the apartment, had a slow morning. I did some work which needed to get done, and then we made our way over to a little coffee shop. What was the name of it? I'll have to dig it up and tag it in the show notes. It was really cool. Very beautiful, like modern design, kind of comedic if you think about the cinder block brick white, you know, urban but like clean vibe. Basically, if you like cleared out an old mechanic garage and then put really minimal like IKEA furniture in it, that was the vibe of this coffee shop, and I loved it. I thought it was great. They had really cool plants. Everything was served with like a sparkling water, and I just got a plain oat milk latte because they had such good espresso and delicious creamy oat milk. Like, it didn't need flavor. It was like naturally good, which is as coffee should be. So we stayed there for a little bit. I feel like it was like serve or swerve or salt or straw or sway. Sey, S-E-Y. It's Sey Coffee in Brooklyn. It was very good. Anyway, so I did some work. I read some more of my book, The Silent Patient, 10 out of 10, recommend it. I finished my book, actually. And then I sat outside to finish munching on some lunch. We got sandwiches from, I think it was called Brooklyn Fresh, Brooklyn Eats, something like that. And so I was finishing my sandwich outside, and this dude comes up and starts flirting. To be fair, I was looking pretty cute. But, you know, I happily direct all conversation back to the fact that I am madly in love with my husband. So I was just chatting with him about what Ian does for work and film and the differences of New York and LA, because this guy was from LA. And then my friend Grace finished up her stuff, so we get together and start walking away, and we were going to go thrifting before we meet up with my friend Shayla and Marissa and some other gals for dinner. And so we start walking down to the thrift store, and we pass a tattoo parlor. And as we're passing, there's like a door with a sign that says like walk-ins welcome. And it's like July 3rd at like 3 p.m., 4 p.m. at this point. There's not a lot going on. It's the middle of the day in the summertime in this part of Brooklyn, which is like really cute locals area. People aren't getting tattoos right now. So my friend Grace, we had kind of talked about this beforehand, so it wasn't totally spontaneous. But she was like, do you want to go in and see if you want to get a tattoo? And I was like, okay. Which, if you know me, it's pretty out of character for me to do something like that. I have thought about getting a tattoo for my whole life. Since I was a teenager, I knew exactly what I wanted and where I wanted it, and that had not changed for the longest time. And then in the last couple months, I was like, you know what? I'll give you context. I was thinking, since I was a teen, like 14, that I wanted to get a small cross on my right hand underneath my thumb, where my thumb connects to my wrist. So like little tiny cross tattoo. And I thought that'd be really cute and beautiful. I would draw it on myself to kind of give myself an idea about what it was going to look like and be like. And so I draw it on myself in college, and one day my professor was like asking about it. He's like, is that real? And I was like, no, but I'm thinking about getting it there. And one of my favorite professors, shout out to Mark Burley, he said to me, doesn't it mean more that you have to put the cross daily on your arm than if you got it on your arm? And I was like, ooh, that's deep. And I really appreciate the sentiment of that. So I was like, you know what? It kind of does. It kind of means more for me to have to physically draw on the symbol of my faith than to just have it on me and think nothing of it. So I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting perspective. So I no longer wanted to permanently get it on me, but rather remind myself daily to put it on me, or better yet, spend actual time than just have the symbols of faith on me, but spend actual practical faith with time with Jesus in the Word or in community or in worship. So anyway, that's kind of why I changed my mind on what tattoo I was going to get. And when I thought about potentially getting one in New York, the idea changed from a symbol of faith and into a symbol of marriage, and something that I chose and was committed to. And so I thought about Ian and our story together, and we have a little code word. We say 14 when we mean that we love each other, or that something is very serious and we need the other person's attention because we both have ADHD. So if we're like trying to be like, hey, I am 110% serious about something, we'll say, hey, 14, I love you. Or like 14, you mean the world to me, whatever. So that's like kind of our word for seriously, promise, love, like that's our little word. And that came because we met on the 14th of January, 2019. So 14 has been our word, our whole relationship. And I was like, it would be really special to solidify our, yes, marriage commitment with a tattoo about our marriage, but also just our relationship and our connection with each other, and, you know, commemorate the day that we came into each other's lives. So I got a tattoo of it. And so we were walking by the store, see the sign, go in. I asked my questions. They're like, we'll be here till 9, walk-ins welcome, here's the minimums, whatever. And then I'm like second guessing things. So I like walk away for a minute just to like make sure that I'm not doing something on the fly, and I want to think it over. And so we walk to the thrift store, and my friend is like on cloud 9 million, and I'm really excited too at the prospect of getting a tattoo. And so we're walking around the thrift store, and I just take a minute and pray about it and look at some items. And I'm like, you know what? You are only 27 in New York City with your bestie one time. And there's very few tattoo ideas I really like. And that I could only see myself getting a couple items tattooed on me. And they're all related to commemorating faith or people or moments, right? I'm not really one for me to get tattoos on like, oh, my favorite book series or my favorite worship lyric or my favorite, you know, flower or anything like that. Like that's just to me not what I want to do. But I liked the idea of commemorating a choice or a person who's very significant in my life, and getting something like that. So I could see myself getting little symbols in the future about different people or moments that impact me, but there's nothing that I wanted to get more than a symbol that represents my husband and I's connection. So I was like, all right, girlie, we're doing this. We're going to get a tattoo. And so I did. We walked back down to the shop, and an amazing tattoo artist named Christy, who had such a cool style. Like his work was so fun, and kind of like if you think of Russian nesting dolls, it was kind of like a Romanian cartoon artist style. And so I was like joking with him, like, sorry, you have such a great style and you have to do a white girl, like a word in cursive tattoo, but here we are. But he was very kind about it and was really cool about the whole process. It took less than 15 minutes. I drew out the word that I wanted in my handwriting a couple different ways. I initially had asked Ian to maybe write it out and do it in his handwriting, but he was like, girl, my handwriting's bad. Like, there's no way you're going to do that. So I was like, all right, you write. So I ended up doing my own handwriting, and that was great too. So yeah, I wrote out the word a few times and got ready to get my first tattoo, which I didn't know what to expect with the feeling. Like, I don't know what I think. I think I had worked up these different ideas of what it could be like and feel like, and I'm very grateful that it wasn't super painful, it wasn't awful, and it was not unenjoyable. It was kind of like an interesting sensation. But But yeah, I got my first tattoo, and then we freaked out, took some photos, and had a fun day with it. Then it was time to head over to meet up with Shayla and Marissa for dinner time. Also, I'm driving in the middle of nowhere and my phone is on 1%, but it's plugged in and says it's charging. I kind of need to pull over for a second and make sure that it's charging, because this could be really bad. Because if my GPS dies, I really don't know like where we are. So, one moment. All right, we're still on 1%, but it does say it's charging, so I'm crossing my fingers that that's the case. Anyway, yes. Okay, so then it was time for dinner. We went to this little pizza shop. I don't remember the name of it. It was in Brooklyn/Bushwick, I think. Very fun vibe, very delicious margarita pizzas. We got some white wine. But most importantly, I got to finally meet Shayla, one of my husband's friends, and another one of his friends, Marissa Mize. These are some icons of the TikTok world. So if you've heard of No Lonely Friends, Marissa's the starter and founder of that. If you've heard of, what was her, Shay and Nate? I think it's Shayla J is her Instagram and TikTok now. She's the gal behind that. So we're talking some like icons, you know, some real royalty from Instagram and TikTok. I'm actually gonna pull over to a McDonald's and pee really fast because I have to pee. But I'll finish this up first. So, yeah. I got to meet these gals in real life, chat with them, share some delicious pizza with them. It was a wonderful time. But unfortunately, they had to go help a friend move in, so we didn't get to do the content photos we were thinking of doing, which is all good. But it was such a fun night. After we took off from dinner, my friend Grace turned me on to this really cute little bar that does jazz, which we love. So we did some live jazz. And it was wonderful. It was kind of like a South African jazz mix. It was just beautiful. Again, live art, music, all of it was 10 out of 10 phenomenal. So we got some yummy, yummy drinks there, split a slice of key lime pie, and enjoyed the jazziness of the evening. And casually sat next to a couple, and then at the end, when we were all getting ready to leave, we made some small talk and found out that the girls, one of the Power Rangers from the movie The Power Rangers. I was like, what? Only in New York, right? So then after that, we headed home and wrapped up the night. And the next day was 4th of July and my last day in New York City, which I was so sad about. I was still in shock that I had a tattoo on my arm. But we woke up and grabbed some coffees. My friend Grace made us delicious French toast for the morning. I packed up. And we headed to Rockaway Beach, which is a short couple subway rides down to New York's one of their beaches. And it was great. Honestly, it was surprising. I did not realize New York had decent beaches. We sat there for a while, ate some yummy watermelon, chatted with some friends, jumped in the water a little bit. I thought it was funny that the two things you're not supposed to do after you get a tattoo is be in the sun or go swimming. And within 12 hours, I was in the ocean in front of the sunshine. So, whoops. But it was just wonderful. A wonderful little way to wrap up the trip. And then we hopped on the train and I made my way to the airport to say goodbye. And I had to leave and it was so sad. But yeah, it was just a wonderful little trip. And I couldn't have asked for, even though the circumstances were at bad timing. Again, I'll share personal stuff in a moment, or on another episode at least, but it was still wonderful. It was a wonderful time. So that was my experience there. New York is amazing. And you can head to my Instagram to see all the places we ate, the things we did, what I would recommend. But overall, if you were heading to New York City, maybe this year, top 3 restaurants that I've been to that I could recommend to you are Rule of Thirds. I think it's in Williamsburg. Amazing. Delicious. I think it's like a Vietnamese inspired, or maybe it's Japanese inspired cuisine. So yummy. Unreal. I had lamb tongue at this restaurant a couple years back. Oh, so good. So Rule of Thirds would be a must. Winsung is another one, another Vietnamese, I believe, inspired restaurant. Delicious, delicious, delicious. Get their their ice cream. It's a sesame ice cream with a grilled donut. Yeah, enough said. That would be one. And then get yourself some Los Tacos #1. It is fast. There's one right off Times Square. There's one in the Upper East Side. Delicious tacos, you guys. Oh my word. Get yourself some Los Tacos #1. Those are some good restaurants I could recommend. Coffee shops. Try the coffee shop we did. I believe it's Sey Coffee. I'll make sure I tag the right one. In Brooklyn. Yummy, artisan. Can't go wrong. You also just cannot go wrong with any small local coffee shop. I want to try Blank Street Coffee. I believe they have a partnership with Emma Chamberlain. I might be wrong, but I do love the Chamberlain Coffee at-home product, so I think the Blank Street would be another good one, but I have not tried it myself, if I'm being honest. And then I liked Milkbar for desserts. It's like very kind of viral but quintessential dessert to get if you're in the Midtown Manhattan area. They had like a cereal ice cream. I personally think it was a little too sweet for me, but I did like it. I liked the concept. I liked the vibe. Really yummy. So try Milkbar if you want something like that. This time around, I got Glace ice cream at Rockefeller Center from a little ice cream truck that they had. But there's also an actual one, I think, in the Upper East Side as well. They are going viral for their frozen hot chocolates, which are so yummy. It's like a giant whipped marshmallow toasted around this cup of like fancy crinkle, like you kind of squeeze the cup to break the chocolate apart, frozen hot chocolate situation. But I also had their chocolate cone and it was yummy. Okay. There are so many delicious cocktail bars and places to get a yummy drink. I kind of have too many thoughts there. And I think one of the best things you could do if you're traveling in is just, look up one near you in an unassuming building and take a seat. Get out of those touristy spots. Try to avoid getting cocktails or any of those, like really, you're not going to find local food around that Times Square area. But if you go a little bit further out of Manhattan, or especially if you're headed into Brooklyn, I think you'll find some great places. But Cafe Lunatico or Bar Lunatico was where the jazz club was. Definitely worth it. And their cocktails were amazing. They were just so yummy. I ended up getting 2 of them because they were that good. Their dessert was delicious. Yummy. I loved all of it. Other thoughts, go thrifting. I always try to go thrifting. I've done, I think we went to one called Urban Jungle, but I've also done the Buffalo Exchange near NYU's campus and Washington Square Park area. So you just never know, like find a little local thrift shop. Again, I tried the niche shop this time around. You never know what you're going to find. And I think going to those thrift stores while you're on a trip is a great way to bring home a little souvenir without spending $1 billion bucks or supporting another tourist trap or a fast fashion brand. Yeah. The other big thing, if you're traveling to New York City for the first time or first time in a long time, go on walks. Put those AirPods in, walk around Soho, grab a pastry, people watch, go to Central Park, doodle with your crayons, listen to an audiobook, walk the Brooklyn Bridge. Enjoy walking the city, and I think you'll just feel a deep sense of appreciation for the architecture, the people, the little quiet spaces. You just never know what you're going to find. And I think every time I've people watched and just walked around, it's been one of the highlights of every single trip I've had there. Another thing I'd suggest is look for local activities maybe before you go, or start following some local influencers from New York City beforehand. I think that helps every trip feel a little more up to date. And obviously, if you have a friend who lives there, getting with them on their agendas. Like my friend Grace was so sweet to be like, yeah, come along. We're going to do a movie in the park. We're going to Bryant Park. We're going to do this. We're going to try this jazz night out. We're going to go to the beach. Like having a local guide is everything. But also if you don't have that, get involved with some Facebook groups beforehand, get involved on Instagram and see what you can find. And it's just, I love New York. It's just a great experience. So that's it for today's episode. Sorry it was so long, y'all.
I really gotta pee, so I'm going to, like we said earlier, not get pulled over and arrested. I'm gonna run into an actual restroom, and I'm gonna be polite today. I'm gonna buy some things. So that's it. I hope your day's amazing. I hope you get to New York soon, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!